Well, it's Christmas for progressives. They finally got Donald Trump. But the question is, what kind of a Christmas is it when there's no Christmas tree and no presents? Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Whittle here with Steve Green and Scott Ott, and we have a little reflection on the latest milestone on our journey to South American Banana Republic. As we record this, gentlemen, it's Tuesday morning or Tuesday afternoon. Donald Trump, of course, has been indicted. He's just made his court appearance. And what I was talking about when I said that there's no Christmas tree or Christmas present for the progressives, it looks like, as things stand now, they're not going to get those things that they really, really wanted from Santa, the things that they just kept reminding him about. It looks like they're not going to get the mugshot. It looks like they're not going to get the perp-walk. It looks like they're not going to get the handcuffs. It looks like they're not going to have him being lowered into a police car. It looks like he is going to deal with this in a manner that deprives them of most of the joy, and I think is going to provide them with a great deal of regret down the road. So, Steve, let's start with you. This is unprecedented, if you'll pardon the expression, in American history, and now apparently now they've decided that there are over 9,000 felony counts that will be issued against Donald Trump.
No.
Because of the 32 counts that would be otherwise misdemeanors have been trumped up to be, if you'll pardon the expression, felony counts because they're adding, oh, so you did this because of this, so on and so forth. We talked about this last week, and it deserves talking about again. It has been widely speculated that the reason that there are almost certainly not going to be mugshots of the president is because the people who are responsible for this travesty understand how powerful those mugshots could be. What a weapon that would be used against them. It would make the MAGA hats trivial and the Let's Go Brandon things. You know, do you think there's some merit to that they realize that what they've done is so dangerous that they can't release the mugshots they're not even going to take the mugshots that they would normally take, the thing that they've always been waiting for, right?
The cuffs and the mugshot.
Yeah.
The perp-walk.
Yeah, where's the mugshot? Yeah. Where is it?
Excellent question. I had this discussion with my friend and PJ colleague Stephen Cruiser last week before we even knew what the charges were going to be. Both sides were hoping for the perp walk and the mugshot, believe it or not. The Democrats want it because they want Trump to be the nominee. They beat him in 2020. I'm not saying they beat him fair and square. I'm saying they beat him in 2020, and they think they can do it again. They want him to be the nominee. The Trump camp wants it to happen because of the flock to the persecuted leader effect. Oh, my. They put Trump in irons. Oh yeah, we're going to rally around him. Even some folks who have maybe lost a little faith or even a little respect after some of the COVID madness of 2020, just rally around the guy. It goes back to that famous meme from a few years ago, the one with that startling black and white photo of Trump that says, "It's you they're after. I'm just in the way." And nothing cements that attitude more than the idea of Trump in handcuffs doing the perp walk, getting the mugshot, all of that. So there's been some debate which side is right to hope for this. And what I'm guessing, because they didn't do the perp walk, because they're not doing the mugshots, is the Democrats realize that it will not serve them well to do these things, or they would have done them. You know that for a fact. If they thought it would help, they would have done it. That said, I'd also like to address the substance of these charges, and actually the substance of the case as well. As to the charges, there are 34 of them, and Nick Arama over at Red State on Tuesday wrote about something that I'd heard of and I completely forgotten about, because there are a lot of things going on in my brain, including martinis. But it's this idea of charge stacking. Let's say there are 34 counts. Well, if the charge is that the suspect put his signature illegally on this form that had some illegality to it, but it's like a mortgage, and you had to initial in 34 different places, they can charge you for each place that you initialed on this same form. So what we're hearing the press shout is 34 charges. What I don't even hear a whisper about is what the charges actually are and how many of them have been stacked in this way. As to the actual substance of the case, I find it very curious, and I'm not defending Trump's personal life, by the way. I'm old enough to remember when he was living his pretty sordid personal life on the front page of every New York City tabloid in the 80s and 90s. The guy's a known quantity. I'm not saying he's the best, most devoted guy all the time. That said, Stormy Daniels went public with her allegations in 2009, and this hush money stuff was supposed to have happened 7, 8, 9 years later. Why do you pay hush money to a story that's been out there for years? This is when I did a little digging of my own, Bill. It turns out Stormy Daniels is actually an accomplished theoretical particle physicist who is the developer of the first fully functioning time machine, and the hush money was paid to her in order to be made retroactive. Now, as it turns out, pornography is just something she did to get herself out of the lab because she was working far too many hours on this time travel device.
As one is wont to do.
Exactly. And just the pornography business, I guess it called to her as something as far afield from theoretical particle physics as anything else.
Scott, this there is this is the sense I'm getting from what's actually happening in this perpetual goat rodeo. It seems to me that on some level, I don't know if the Democrats, when I say, let me just say powers that be, okay? Whoever, the powers that be, if you want to take it right, just as small as the district attorney, whatever, they made a large decision to do something. This is not like photographic evidence of him, murdering somebody in prison because the video cameras will just occasionally burn out. That just happens. But these charges are at the very least questionable, and they went ahead and did it anyway. Do you think that this lack of the arrest or the lack of mostly the lack of the mugshot, do you think this is a realization on their part that they have miscalculated, or do you think they're just trying to minimize the potential damage and still get the charges on him so that theoretically he couldn't run again?
Well, when we talked about this before, I indicated that I don't think this is going to play out the way Democrats hoped it will. Since the announcement that he would be arraigned, since the announcement that these indictments were going to be handed down, his campaign has raised $8 million, and that's up $1 million since yesterday, as we're recording this on Tuesday. So, money is pouring in as people step up to try to defend their president, the guy that they voted for, the guy that they hope will be the president of the United States again. So I think that there's some recognition to put the best possible spin on it. I think you deal differently with a former president of the United States, even though he's now just an ordinary citizen, so-called, than you do with an ordinary citizen. I mean, frankly, the guy's going to be under lifetime Secret Service protection. He still gets
even
paid.
In prison.
He gets an office. So he's not just an ordinary citizen, really, as it was originally envisioned. And so you've got to deal with different security arrangements. You've got to deal with a whole different kind of protocol. So on the best possible spin on things, the court recognized, or the prosecuting attorney recognized, you know what, it's not necessary to handcuff him. We don't have to take a picture because everybody knows what he looks like. It's not like we'd have to put that picture up in the post office and go, have you seen this man?
Don't you find that a form of cowardice, though? I mean, don't you find that you find that
it could be a form of cowardice? What I'm saying is it's not necessarily a form of cowardice. It may just be an acknowledgement of reality. It may just be a recognition of who this guy is, and we don't have to go to those steps.
But
now, last I heard, they did intend.
They do it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they might, but they. you can't do that without reasonable color of law on your side of the ledger. You've got to find a reason why you have to do that, and for whatever reason they decided not to do it. By the way, these 34 counts, these are 34 felony counts. Previously, we had heard that some of the allegations against him were technically misdemeanors, but if those misdemeanors were committed in the act of committing another crime, that they could be escalated to felony counts. And my guess is Steve is right. It's multiple incidents of the same thing. The charge is falsifying records. And so basically it's a bookkeeping account. And it just makes me wonder whether if the accountant had written in the books, $130,000 hush money to porn star, like we'd be okay because that would not be a false record.
Miscellaneous.
Assuming that that's what had really happened. But to your point, Bill, apparently there's some dispute over this. I mean, if the IRS contacted me and said, hey, you filed a false return, well, either I did or I didn't. If I did, I may immediately call my attorney and say, hey, can you keep me out of prison? But if I didn't, then I would fight to defend myself. So apparently the prosecuting attorney here there's some question as to whether this is whatever was done was actually a felony of falsifying records in support of some other kind of criminal act. So this is not a cut and dried case in any case. And just because fancy legal words like indictment and arraignment are used doesn't mean that the guy is guilty. He is innocent until proven guilty.
And hush money isn't actually illegal. It's basically a cash forward.
It's a contract.
Well, yeah, and you notice the charges are probably not paid hush money to a porn star. The charges are falsified records.
So
it's like Al Capone.
So they
got him a tax evasion.
Yeah. So the idea that's actually I wanted to ask you a follow up on this.
Okay.
That's a perfect example of what I think is going on. They got Al Capone on tax evasion charges. Right, you did the most remarkable series called Freedom's Charter back at our former employee about the structure of the United States government and how it got to be there. And when we see evidence of this kind of thing, we find that one of the few, very, very few areas that seem to have not been nailed down completely is this idea of prosecutorial prerogative.
Discretion.
The idea discretion, yeah. The idea that an individual can decide once he's DA or whatever, I don't want to pursue this case. I do want to pursue that case. That means that the outcome of the law is in fact largely determined by the personality of the person who is district attorney for that particular region. So as we found out in Steve's case this week on Right Angle, a prosecutor can elect to not press charges or investigations into Hunter Biden, and at the same time, a different prosecutor can elect to look at what would have been a misdemeanor charge, which you generally don't need a grand jury for, and an indictment, and all the rest of this stuff, and turn it into this history-breaking event. Do you see this as a real problem? This idea that a prosecutor can simply ignore charges, or what you said about Al Capone is it, right? The idea is that if somebody commits a crime, you go looking for the evidence, right? Let me rephrase that. You've got evidence, and now you want to find the man, right? Here's a crime committed. Let's find out who the individual is.
Yeah.
What this is we've got the man. Now we have to go find the evidence, and that is not good.
Well, and
for anybody.
This is why district attorney and state's attorney generals are generally elected officials, because it's a political office. Basically, you're going to vote for the guy that you think will go after the crimes that you care about, because no DA prosecutes everything. They don't have the time or the resources to do that. And so they have to go after, basically the rule, as I learned when I was in county government, the DA in that jurisdiction was basically going after the things he could win. So the question is, does Alvin Bragg think he can win? does the Manhattan DA think he can win this case? Because usually political prosecutors don't lay themselves out there for something they don't think they can win. They want to be able to run for office and say, I convicted 99% of the criminals that I brought to court. And so this is an interesting one here, because if he's strictly so-called politically motivated, does he get points with the voter base for just basically slapping Trump around, but without getting him? And that's enough. Or does he literally think that he's going to be able to nail him on these charges? I think there's nothing you can do to get away from prosecutorial discretion. It's going to exist as long as you have limited resources and limited time, or if you want the prosecution state to grow massively beyond what it already is. So yeah, that's always going to be problematic. The question is, how do we reward the people in those offices for who they choose to prosecute and who they neglect to prosecute?
Yeah, and you can't bring you can't bring private legal proceedings against a prosecutor for defamation or anything like that. I mean, you have no recourse. As far as I can see, this district attorney, in conjunction with other people he's had conversations with, have decided that the simple indictment is enough damage to our political opponents to be a win, regardless of whether we find him guilty or not. I think the chances of them finding him guilty are very, very slim, and I think they probably knew that.
And by the way, what Steve said earlier, and very hilariously noted that Stormy Daniels has not invented a time machine. The allegation is that the reason why they felt they had to pay her hush money at the time that they did was because she was getting ready to publish a book.
On theoretical.
First of all, I think Donald Trump handled this rather well. I don't know if the conversation we had was off camera or whatever, but I think you said, Scott, that there was an offer to do this by Zoom call or something remotely.
Yeah. I think
He didn't
Steve
have to
said
make an
that.
appearance.
Yeah, that was me.
Steve said that. So apparently they said to Donald Trump, we can just go through this on the Zoom call. You don't have to come all the way up here. And I think Donald Trump did exactly the right thing. No, you're gonna accuse me of crimes in front of the entire country. I'm gonna fly up to that courtroom. I'm gonna walk in there stony faced, as you said. I'm gonna do all of these things, and you are going to now bear the consequences of this. We're not gonna do indictment light here, right? We're not gonna do the just here's another asterisk on his name. The reason I think the mugshot is so critical. And as we record this, the reason it looks like there is not going to be one, or the handcuffs, is because the people that instigated this event understand that the idea of a former president in handcuffs and a mugshot is so unprecedented, so unheard of, that if you were to do such a thing, the evidence against him would have to be so overwhelming and the crime of such magnitude that you would have to have that kind of confidence to say that this is what we need to do to have justice. If it turns out that your position as the Democrats in this is to say that, I don't know, the mugshot may help them more than they helps us, that's not a profound statement of confidence in terms of the size of the crimes and the degree of which I am confident that I will, win the case. So there's all of that, but ultimately it comes down to something just, really much more simple. This is lawfare. This is the power of the federal government being done to stop somebody who they perceive to be an existential threat to their existence. And was mentioned earlier that famous quote of Donald Trump's is, they're not coming after me, they're coming after you, I'm just in their way. Why do you think it is that in the last several years, the big money from George Soros has not gone into like the federal campaigns or the national campaigns? Soros has been funding the campaigns of local, low-level, city-level district attorneys and city attorneys in Los Angeles, San Francisco, and so on, because Soros understands what the plan is. And we can see the plan begin with the Obama administration. If you can take over the Justice Department, if you have the Attorney General or the district attorney on your side, then the law doesn't matter anymore. Evidence doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't matter how much evidence there is or isn't. It doesn't matter how strong or how weak the case is. If you control either the district attorneys or the city attorneys or the attorney general, you get to ignore whatever crimes you want to ignore, and you get to find evidence for whatever crimes you want to invent. And Donald Trump is exactly right. If it turns out that somebody in the government doesn't like you, and then they can go through your records to find evidence of something that you did wrong, rather than saying, here's a crime committed, who did it? Then this is exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about the government coming after you because they don't like your political views. They don't like the fact that you're a threat to them. And if this doesn't alarm people, then nothing will. And that's why they haven't revealed, this is why they're not going to take the mugshot. Because if they do, they understand that this is not a picture of Donald Trump standing in front of a board with a sign. It's you. It's you. You're the person in that picture, and that's why they're not releasing it, and they know it. For Steve Green, I'm Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott as well, and I'm just too worked up to be able to even close the show. This is Right Angle. We'll see you next time right here on Right Angle.